I'm not a big fan of practice. I've had a love-hate relationship when it comes to practicing a script or even rehearsing before an event because I find it extremely anxiety-inducing activity for me. I don't like feeling that way. I tend to think that I've done this for a while now, speaking at events, speaking impromptu. Why don't I just leave it to sheer skill? About 6 months ago, a university in Bangalore reached out to me for their TEDx event. I was a bit conflicted because it was going to be my first ever TEDx talk and I obviously wanted it to be perfect. It meant a great deal to me, and they told me I'd have about 15 minutes of stage time, timed to the dot, which meant there was no room for messing around. But I love messing around on stage. Speaking through my thoughts and finding my way as I go along is something that I enjoy doing. But this time, I didn't have that luxury. I just had to get it right. Something else I want to tell you at this point is that I've always been a huge Kevin Hart fan. I've watched and rewatched all of his Netflix specials and television appearances. And the strange thing is, he's never had an unfunny moment, which I think is bizarre. But I learned much later that it's not always the case. Not every moment is graceful and not every moment of his is as perfectly timed and comical as we see on the internet, obviously. I listened to a podcast recently where he was talking about this process of his, how he prepares for a tour. And it turns out that what we see on screen is the result of a year-long preparation where he shows up at open mics unannounced in tier 2 cities to try out new material to see if it works or not in front of a live audience. It could work at home when you're writing it, but will it work in front of a live audience? He tries them, reworks them, tries them again, performs again, and does this with all of his bits until they're just right, until they're perfected. And this backstory sort of blew my mind. And it's not just Kevin Hart, but many live artists, musicians, motivational speakers, even sports people like cricketers before a big tournament. Chiteshwar Pujara travels to England 6 months before a test series to play county cricket and get used to the conditions there. Yes, most elite performers do this. Everyone except us. Us working professionals, knowledge workers who go to the office, who deliver presentations at work, always ignoring that it's even possible that this presentation will amount to much. What if we used a similar warrior-like approach to preparing for a big presentation? As working professionals, we have a chaotic process when it comes to preparing, and it tends not to be mindful of the leaps and jumps we take in our thinking when we're preparing, which means when they're exposed in front of a live audience, these gaps, these flaws, they blow up in our face. And these experiences end up being overwhelming at best or embarrassing in certain worst case scenarios, in which case we tend not to go up and present ever again. We don't take those opportunities ever again. And ever since I gave that TEDx talk about 6 months ago, people have reached out to tell me how much they loved it and how natural and unrehearsed it looked, which is very strange to me because the exact opposite happened. I rigorously practiced for it. I do believe that a lot of work goes into making a complicated task look effortless. Developing a process of practice and preparation, it builds a sense of repeatability into future speaking opportunities. And it's very important. For example, team meetings, town halls, or even high stakes presentations in front of your boss's boss. If you have a mindful process, if you practice enough, your peers and colleagues will even go so far as calling you a natural, which I think is the best possible compliment. Practicing your talk is a lot like taking your story for a test drive. This perspective, this newfound perspective has given me a lot more patience when it comes to the preparation process. It's even made it more bearable. And I do believe from the bottom of my heart that stage time is precious time. What could be better than a dozen or more eyeballs fixated on you and an audience hanging on to every word you're saying? Fall in love with the process. Take a test drive.